Hey, everybody, and welcome to A Balanced Life with Dr. Jacquie here at Black Star Network. And each and every week, we are bringing you tips and tools that you can put in your kit in order to be able to live a balanced life. And as we are going through Black History Month and coming out of Black History Month, one thing is for sure, we are 365 Black. So with that in mind, there's things that usually come to our space when we talk about what do we do during Black History Month? How are we managing our culture? What do we do to help people identify, understand? And I know we're tired of explaining, but that's a part of what it means to be balanced. Being able to have responses, being able to have answers, and sometimes just being able to take a deep breath and just walk away, because not everything that we do requires a response. And so we get into this space as we're moving into discovering not only who we are, but teaching our children why they matter and the value that they bring to our society. It helps us as adults to know our space in the place in which we live and how we can begin to really articulate our feelings, our emotions, so that we can maintain our own physical health, our spiritual health, our financial health, as well as our mental health. Today, we're going to be talking about some of those things that really are hot button issues with us. People want to touch our hair. Individuals want to know why we listen to the music we listen to. We're often sometimes offended when we look over and see the person listening to rap music doesn't look like us. How has our culture been co-opted? How has it become mainstream? And how well are we doing embracing it? Today, we're going to be joined with some of our subject matter experts who can bring us responses to some of your questions. We have, of course, Dr. Tierney, who is with us, our Level Up coach. We have also with us Stacey Owens from and the founder of SECA School of the Arts and Technology. And today we're also going to be joined by one of our very own, Faraji Muhammad of the Culture here at Black Star Network. Welcome in, everyone.
Hi, good.
Hey, Dr. J.
Hey, y'all.
Jackie, what's good?
Oh, everything is good. Let me tell you, I am so thrilled to have the three of you with us today because we are going to bring it to our audience. And as Stacey likes to say, sometimes she's here for the smoke. So I'm ready to find out what the smoke is going to be today. Is she bringing it or is she taking it? Because we get into this space, as Dr. Tierney often tells us, that we have to figure out how to level up our responses in order to level up in life. So let me just ask you all this question. I'm going to start with Dr. T. How are you each doing balancing yourselves? Now we're, 2 months into this new year, about to be 3 months in. And oftentimes how we see ourselves in our space doesn't necessarily help other people because they think we should be over here in this box. And we're like, no, we're moving on up to other things. So Dr. Tierney, tell us how you're doing.
I'm doing really good. And I'm going to tell you why I'm doing really good, because I'm really just now kicking off my 2023. I know that sounds a bit like, wait a minute, ma'am, we are 2 months into 2023. But I put up a post not that long ago where I said sometimes a girl just needs to go home. And that's what I did. I went home to Memphis, Tennessee, and I spent about 3 weeks at home, just being with my family, being with my parents, loving on them, letting them love on me. Just didn't realize just how much I needed to go home until I got there. And then I just didn't want to leave, and that just doing that one simple act brought me so much peace, so much joy, so much balance into my life, because sometimes being Dr. Tierney can get a little heavy. Sometimes I just need to go and be Tierney, and just go back to the place where it all started, go back to the room that I grew up in and just roll around in the bed and go to my grandmother's house and, lay my head in her lap. And that's literally what I did, for 3 weeks. And so I'm just now really coming back to say, okay, now I'm ready to tackle 2023. Now I'm ready to start in on that list that God gave me back in October of 2022. Now I'm ready to get started. Now, a lot of people are like, okay, what are you doing? Why you haven't been posting? Where are you at? It was not time. And I'm okay with that. I don't have that pressure to perform. I don't put that pressure on myself because I know what it takes to be me. I know the cost I have to pay to sit in this big yellow chair. So I had to take it home for a minute so that I can come out strong and doing what it is that I'm called to do. So I'm good. I'm well rested, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and ready to rock and roll.
All right, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. So let me ask you a follow-up question, because oftentimes people say they want to go home. And when they get home, they get into this space of being able to do some really serious self-reflection. So I won't ask you what did Dr. Tierney learn about Dr. Tierney, but I will ask you, what should people discover about themselves when they do take that time to steal away?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So for me, it was one of those things where when I went home, I was going back to kind of the environment that nurtured me, being born and bred in Memphis, Tennessee. There's a different kind of rhythm, that we have. I like to say I have barbecue sauce in my veins and just the blues and just the way that we move. And, and so I tell people that sometimes we have to go to that place where we were nurtured, that place where we started to become, not necessarily to go backwards, but to just remember. to remember the roots, that you come from, to remember, all of those things that really helped you to be who you are right now. Sometimes we can get into this space where we feel like we have to leave all of those things behind, when really those things are the ones that helped you to be where you are right now. Now, we may refine some things, we may add some things we may take out, but in going back to home, going back to your roots and realizing that these are the things, this is the foundation, these are the people that love you unconditionally, that will always be there for you, no matter how high up, you go, those things can really feed and nourish your soul. So never forget that. So when you go back, make sure that you're going back to be fed, going back to feed others, and going back to remember.
Thank you for sharing that. Stacey Owens, talk about that for a moment from your own perspective. Where are you and how are you doing as you are rolling, 2-3 months into 2023?
Well, for the last 30 seconds, I felt at peace because I was listening to her story.
Come on. Right.
I called your name too soon.
Right.
I needed a few more minutes, and I was zenning out just from, going back home with her and trying to get some of that barbecue sauce in my veins. But all is well. All is well. For me, for 2023, I jumped into some heavy projects like right out the gate, and so I think being that I'm going into March now, or in March now, the early part of March, I'm starting to see that maybe I need to start doing something to slow down, pull back, and just recenter myself. It's not that it's a bad thing. All is well. The projects are going well, but it's a lot. It's heavy. And so the first thing we have to do is have an awareness of ourselves. So I'm very in tune with my body. I'm very in tune with my mind. I'm very in tune with knowing when you're working on heaviness and when you're working on heavy projects, you have to know when your body says, slow down, stop, take a break, relax, enjoy the moment, enjoy the journey. You have to listen to that. So it's one part of my mind that's saying, no, I have to keep pushing forward because I have these deadlines I have to meet. But it's another sign that's saying, if I don't take care of myself, then I'm not going to be able to meet those deadlines anyway. So I'm becoming more balanced in knowing when to say when. So all is well over here. I think, as I progress and move forward next year, maybe I should start my January out like Dr. Tyranny, though.
Right.
Absolutely. We each have to find that space. Do we start in October getting ready for the new year, or do we wait until the new year to really settle into ourselves? Because each of us in that space are getting prepared to help other people live better lives. So Faraji is with us today. I'm so excited to talk to him. So Faraji, give us just a little bit about where you are right now, personally balancing things. And then at the top of the next block, we're going to just really dive in with Faraji Muhammad. Hey, Faraji.
Absolutely. Hey, Doctor, I appreciate you so much. And big shout out to these dynamic sisters on the panel today, because I feel like this is therapy right now. For me, 2023 started in a very interesting space where, Almighty God just took away everything from 2022, literally, emotionally, mentally, physically. Like, I had to start off 2023 very, very much in a humble space, making a big journey from Baltimore to Los Angeles with my family has been a huge jump. I mean, a major transition from everything. And so, when you ask that question, where am I? I'm just starting to get settled. I will say that since we've been out here in LA for the past 8 months or so, we have been in constant movement. I'm just starting to get settled. I'm just starting to feel like, okay, now this new life can start. It has been such a very powerful experience, because the big thing that I've learned is that you just have to be comfortable with where you are. And a lot of times we want to push things, we're trying to force things to happen. But, as my sister Stacey just mentioned, listening to my body, learning how to take cues from the body, not just from the mind, but from the body, to say, as I'm making decisions, as we're transitioning, as I'm moving around, what feels good? What sense do you get from this moment or from this situation? And just to be comfortable. I came out here thinking that I was going to hit the ground running. My body and my spirit told me, don't do that. Get into LA, settle down with the family, learn more about yourself, take time. In Baltimore, so much has been placed on us in terms of, the work that I do with social justice and media and all of these other things. But I was really confronted, Dr. Jacquie, with the question of who do I want to be now in this part of my life? And not just in this new physical space, but also in this new emotional and mental space. So I have been very, very, I think I've been very, merciful to myself to not allow stuff to just constantly be on go, where I can just, I'm constantly moving. I'm always busy. I hate telling people that now, like, I'm always busy. Like, no, I'm trying to put some boundaries up. I'm trying not to just go crazy. So this has been a very interesting year, but I'm learning how to just be in the moment. And more importantly, once I'm in that moment, to accept it, to be grateful for it, and then just to have faith that I'm not going to be there all the time, that something new is going to be revealed to me and inspire me to move to the next step. So I'm learning how to listen to my body and to my divine spirit at this point.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. I know a lot of you are out there listening and you're like, oh my God, this makes so much sense to me. When we come back after the break, let's unpack a few of those things, because there are going to be times when you too have to start over. And whereas we were going in one direction with this show, I feel like we need to stay here for a moment. So when we come back, we're going to talk about having a blank slate. We'll be back after the break.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Holding no punches.
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
I thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Welcome back, everyone, to A Balanced Life. And as you can tell, there are going to be times in your life where you're going to have to uproot. You're going to have to listen to yourself. Sometimes you're going to come out the gate running because there's so much you have to do. But then there are times where you need to just step back, sit back, and allow yourself to survey the landscape. I want to bring Faraji Muhammad back in. I want to start with him because he brings up a very important point about what it means to listen to yourself. We're also going to have Faraji tell us a little about who he is, what he does, and the transition that he's made. Welcome back, Faraji.
Thank you so much, Doc. How you feeling?
I'm feeling real good. You know, you brought up some very important points about what it means to have a blank slate and not just keep the mental state that you had when you left Baltimore and went to LA. And I mean mental by moving quickly, learning how to take your time. Tell us about who you are, what you do, the transitions that you're making in this season in your life.
Well, I've always been in the media space. So I've been truly, truly blessed to work in Black media for predominantly most of my whole career in media, working at Morgan State University as a radio show host, and having some great success there, working in the social justice space of making sure that everything from police reform in Baltimore to school accountability. And then also just continue to be on the speaking engagement on the circuit and somewhat just talking and inspiring the next generation and the next generation of high school and college students, but also just inspiring folks to think deeper and much different about the space that we're all in. Now, of course, with my show, The Culture, here on the Black Star Network, it allows us to have a much deeper conversation about cultural influences and the things that impact us. Because here's the thing, Doc, one of the big things that I found, and this is one of the reasons why we wanted to have a show the way we do on Black Star Network, is that we could talk about stats, we could talk about data, we can have expert voices, but one of the biggest factors for our behavior is our culture. the things that we don't quote unquote see, but we feel it. Just like Dr. Tierney mentioned, going back home, the culture of being back home, it is our culture that influences us the most. It's like what we learned back in school, peer pressure, how that, your peers influence us. The culture influences Black folks in this country right now. And so we're having a lot of cultural conversations, and it's important and necessary conversations about the impact of our culture, from everything from politics to health and wellness to, entertainment and artistic expression. So it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. Now, for me, as I'm learning more about the culture and taking time out, I realize that it requires me to take a step back. I don't want to be the end all be all voice of the culture. I think that what we each can bring to the conversation is a perspective that will help to enlarge or expand our view of the culture, to help us think critically about the culture. But I don't want to be the guy that's like, oh, as soon as you walk in the room, hey, let's talk about Black culture. I want to moderate those conversations, help facilitate, and essentially empower people to see themselves as the power brokers of this space that we call culture.
Absolutely. I want to bring Stacey Owens into this conversation. Her being, a founder of a school that is in technology and the arts, there's often those times that we see our children not being able to have that voice. Stacey, talk to us for a moment about the value and at what age do we introduce our children to substantive conversations about culture? Because where you are, they see culture every day, some of it good and some of it not so good. How are we navigating these spaces?
Well, I can only speak about my space, and I know my space is not necessarily the norm of everywhere across the world. But my kindergartners start learning about culture. My curriculum is designed to align actually to the social justice standards. And we start that conversation very early. I have a hip hop class that all of my kids participate in from kindergarten to 8th grade. So it's important for students to be able to see themselves, see others that look like them, know their history, know the marks that we've made in history, know what our ancestors have done, and know their responsibility to carry on some of those things. But it's more important for them to understand how to communicate their feelings and their expressions as it relates to those things, so that we don't create an educational environment that silence people's voices and make you just be comfortable to the things that can oppress you. So I'm going to say, there might not be a lot of people out there with what's going on in the world right now that might agree with me, but we start those conversations when they walk in the door.
You bring up a valid point related to not necessarily just age, but also what it means where you are environmentally or your locale geographically, in the world, from where you are in Carolinas to where Faraji was in Baltimore to where he is in California now. There seems to be a common thread, though, that ties everything together. Faraji, talk to us about a common thread culturally and generationally that we can maybe latch onto that can help us have some of these cultural conversations.
Well, I'm glad that you asked that question, because the big one that I often see, and I'm sure all of you sisters, y'all probably have noticed as well, it doesn't matter what city that you go in America, where Black folks live, and where folks that aren't Black live. And that's unfortunate. You know what I mean? That we can go into any major city. And as soon as as soon as we got to LA, it was like, oh, okay, so this is where Black folks are, right? This is where the culture is, whether you're talking about South LA, then, you go into East LA, that's where our Latino and Hispanic brothers and sisters are. You go into West LA, that's where, you see the celebrities and the affluent are, And so that's one of the things that struck me, is that there is such a huge disparity. The line is really, it's so blatantly clear. And I think that speaks volumes about where we are, that you can go from LA, you can go to Memphis, Chicago, you can go to DC, every major city in this country, you could tell this is where Black folks are, this is where other folks are. And I think we need to, kind of push back on that. And it has kept us, and this is what I've learned from being in Baltimore, you don't need to put up physical barriers. The barriers starts here. You know, we set up our own barriers. Like we come to a place, and Los Angeles only has about 8 to 9% Black folks in the city. It's declined greatly over these years. And when you get into the spaces, like when I tell people, oh, I live in LA, and they're like, oh, okay, so you live in South LA, you live in Inglewood, you live in Compton. And it's like, why do you have to live in those places if you're Black, right? There's this assumption that you just have to be in those spaces. And it's like, no, I don't live in those parts, actually. So it's like we put up these mental roadblocks on how far we're going to go. We put up these mental roadblocks of who we want to be and how we want to be seen in the world. And I think that's the big thing. You know, I'm in my 40s, and at this point, I'm looking at Dr. Jacquie, where I'm asking, how can I redefine myself, right? And I think this is one of the biggest fears that so many of us have, is that, you know, we think that once you get into a certain age bracket, like, oh, start to settle down, that you don't just make a major move and uproot your family and move and all of those things. But this is life. That's the beauty of life, right? There is a point that you want to get settled down, but at the same time, you don't want to lose the drive and the fire to redefine who you are. And that's the fun part for me, that in the midst of all of this movement and transition, in the midst of all of these changes, I get to define what I want my next chapter to be. I ask the God to help me to manifest my best self in this new space. I get to redefine who I am. And I think that's one of the best expressions of leadership, when you can redefine who you are and not allow other forces to do it for you.
So this is a great segue for me to bring in Dr. Tierney, because literally assimilation is difficult for many people. They feel the need to have to be who they are, where they are, and not necessarily take their authentic self with them because they haven't become who they're meant to be. Dr. Tierney, talk to us about that for a minute, because that dynamic in itself, I'm going to be a chameleon, but I'm never going to be me. Talk to us about that for a moment, and how do we move ourselves out of that space as we grow?
Yeah, as Faraji was talking, I was over here just amening, like, yes, amen, read it, yes. You know, we're the ones that put these constraints on ourselves and compartmentalize who we are. You know, I tell people all the time, you know, I am 3 different people. I am Tierney, I am Dr. Tierney, and I'm Mrs. Hodges-Murad. But at the core of all of it, I'm me. And if you don't know who you are, if you don't know who your authentic self is, if you are presenting yourself to the world behind this mask, so when I'm this person, then I only talk like this, and I only sit like this, and I only say, but then when I'm this person, I'm like, man, then you're not really being truly your authentic self across all of the different areas, across all of the different roles, titles, responsibilities that you have. So when we're talking about assimilating, it requires us to be authentic with us first. I can't be authentic with you if I'm not being authentic with myself. As Dr. Tierney, you will hear me say, man, listen, this is what we're doing. You know, as Tierney, you will hear me throw out a big GRE word, and my people look at me and be like, wait, can you define that? You know, as Mrs. Hodges-Murad, you know, as I submit to my husband, there's still some places where he'll be like, you know what, baby, that's all you. You got that. You run with it, you know, because I know who I am. I know who I am, and I know whose I am. And when you know that, you're unstoppable, because you're going to show up as your authentic self, no matter the room that you're in, no matter what table that you're sitting at, and you're going to feel comfortable doing so, and not feeling like you have to put on a mask to perform for them and hiding who you are.
When we come back after the break, I'm going to unpack this a little bit more, because as we move around this world, we relocate for our jobs. If you're in the military, you know, for whatever, if we travel, if we feel like we need a break or a change, we do these things. So when we come back after the break, let's talk about finding your tribe, no matter where you find yourself. We'll be back in a moment.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Welcome back, everyone, to A Balanced Life. And as you can tell, there is so much to unpack, but at the same time, we're really discovering who we are, and it's okay to just be you. Welcome back, everybody, because I want to talk about finding your tribe no matter where you are. And oftentimes that's not easy. I want to start with Stacey, because not only is she doing her thing with kids, but Stacey is a speaker. She travels a lot. She's in a variety of environments, and she deals with a lot of different people. Stacey, talk to us about what it means to just be you and find your people, whether it's around music, food, the culture in itself, or recreation and the arts. How do we really get to know who we are so we can just be our authentic self?
I think a lot of that starts with just tapping from within and knowing what you're comfortable with doing. I know the things that bring me happiness, that brings me peace. So I try to, connect my emotions to it. If it makes me feel good, I'm going to do more of that. When I meet new people and bring people into my fold, if you're a person who is coming into my circle and you're helping to expand, I get a good vibe from you. We have similar thoughts. Similar dreams, similar whatever. We just have a connection with each other. Then I know that you can be part of my tribe. But if I have somebody that come in and you bring negative energy and you're always taking something from me, then I need to figure out what's your reason and your season so I can give you that and let you go on about your way. Because your tribe is going to be the one that embrace you, that holds you up, help you. That's going to just make you do everything that you're doing better. So I'm very careful with who I pick to be part of my tribe. And sometimes you don't even get to pick them. They just God sort of send them to you and they be all right. and you be like, all right, this is my tribe. I think with kids though, since I spend a lot of my time trying to teach kids how to just be acceptance of themselves and start learning who they are at an early age, is such a challenge for them, because it all starts with who influenced you. And so they have so many influences. They're influenced by what they see on TV. They're influenced by what they're seeing in their family structure. They're influenced by what they're seeing in the community and what they're exposed to. And with the population that I serve, they're not exposed to much. They don't have a lot of those opportunities to go out and see anything beyond what's in their immediate circle. So it sort of delays helping them to find out and figure out, like, who are you and what do you value within yourself, especially if you don't have anybody in your circle that's putting those words of affirmation in your head and telling you, helping you to see what your greatness is. So it all starts with just loving you. Everything I feel in the world starts with love.
I love that, because I think that's stated in such a way that it allows people to say, if I begin with loving me, then it will help me love other people better or differently. Faraji, talk to us about it. What say ye?
You know what? It's powerful what Sister Stacey just mentioned, and what Dr. Tierney's just mentioned too, about showing up and being your authentic self. And there was something that I learned in my therapy session, right? My therapist told me at the beginning of the therapy process, she said, Faraji, one of the things that I want to do is to try to take you from being a compartmentalized individual and integrating all of those elements of yourself into one person. And I think this is where culture plays a huge role, right? Because culture compartmentalizes us. Culture compartmentalizes us in the way we look. It compartmentalizes in where we live. It compartmentalizes us on our skin or our identity. So it breaks us up into parts where we're not really fully embracing who we are, right? That we're not satisfied about the person that we are. And so we go through the social media space, we go into these conversations, and we're like broken people in so many different ways, right? We're not healed, whole people. And so I think it's important for us to take a look at, the impact of that. The other point that Sister Stacey made was so important is that, you get a sense of, like she said, catch a vibe on who's in your life. Well, here's the other thing about that. If you aren't whole, if you aren't healed, then that means that people can still attract a certain element of you, but they may not be good for you. You see what I'm saying? And see, that's a very hard place to be, because you're like, but this person, I'm around them, they make me feel this way, or are they adding this? And when you sit back, and I'm saying, when you sit back and look at somebody and say, oh, does this person really help me? that they help to empower me. And even in that, it becomes almost a transactional type of relationship. Like, I get from you what you get from me. That's the space that we find our culture in. But if you look back and say, okay, is this person only attracting a small element of, for example, if Dr. Stacy, this person only attracts the Dr. Stacy in me, not the other parts of me. Can they be a part of your tribe? And I think that's the question, is like, you want people to be in your tribe that I think that accepts the whole person, right? Not just your different sides of you, right? Because when you're talking about creating a tribe, you're talking about a friendship. You're talking about relationships that are going to stand the test of time and that's going to weather the storms of life. And you don't need fair weather folks around you to be like, oh, I thought you were this way, so therefore I'm a head out on stage left. You know what I mean? And it's like, people coming into our lives all the time, but those who are there to see your whole self, where you can be vulnerable, where you can be insecure, as we all are, where you can be fragile and strong at the same time, those are the folks that you want to bring them into your tribe.
Absolutely. Dr. Tierney.
And I'm going to pick up right where my brother just left off and put that the onus is on you. The responsibility of that is on you. So if I'm walking around putting on this mask, putting on this front, putting on this performance, and presenting a representative of who I want you to think that I am, then the people that you attract will be attracted to that mask, to that persona. And when that persona is heavy and you let it slip a little bit, and then another piece of you pop out, and they go, oh, wait a minute, I didn't know you. We can't get mad at them for deciding to exit stage left. We're the ones that shake their listening for us based on this false, phony perception that we wanted them to have of us. So the responsibility when we're talking about your tribe, birds of a feather flock together, you need to check your own feathers. You need to decide, what feathers do I have? What feathers do I want to peacock around? What feathers, are truly authentically me? And then let the people that share those feathers, that like your feathers, that will celebrate your feathers, let them come to you. And this isn't just in personal, this is also in business. I tell people all the time, I am the best coach on this side of glory, but I am not the coach for everybody. And that's okay. So when we get caught into this whole thing of wanting everyone to like us or everyone to, no sugar. Everybody is not going to like you. Everybody is not supposed to be in part of your tribe. And that's totally okay. It doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't make them a bad person. They just got different feathers, period. And you may not be the guide for them. You may not be the friend for them. You may not be the partner for them. You may not supposed to collaborate with them. And that's okay. But you keep being you, and the right people will connect with you. God will send the right people for you, for your personal life, for your relationship, for your business, or whatever it is that you're supposed to connect with them on. You don't have to change you in order to make them comfortable. You keep being you. And know that the right people will come alongside of you, and that will become your tribe.
So I'm going to go in reverse order, because I think this is a great place to give our audience a challenge. So Dr. Tierney, if you wanted the people to find something, what would you challenge them to go and find as they begin to discover who their tribe is and what their tribe should look like? Go find you. Go find you. Go on an exploration, an internal exploratory, Dora the Explorer. Carmen Sandiego, whatever. You go and find you, okay? And it's not out here. It's not under a rock. It's all in here. So my brother said he was working with his therapist, and y'all know I'm listen. A therapist, a coach, call me. I got you, but you have to find you. Absolutely. Faraji, what should they go and find? I
would say find your the areas of yourself that you aren't strong in. Find the areas that you can deem to be weak in. Find the areas that you're the most vulnerable in, right? And because I think everything, again, in our culture, we love to talk about our strengths, what you think you bring to somebody's life, what you bring to a position, and all of those things. But we don't spend enough time focusing on the other things, right? The things that we really need to improve upon about, being good human beings, character development, right? Or just knowing that, you know what, not being afraid to confront your own demons. So, Dr. Tierney said, find you. I'm going to add, find you in the worst places. Like, where are those spaces, or what are those circumstances that will cause you to not be in your best self, right? And to start to look at that. I think that if we do a deep dive into, those things, our own shortcomings, I think we will be much better, because in that deep dive, hopefully you start to gain some understanding, not just for you, but for other people's pain. You start to be much more compassionate and less judgmental, right? You start to really being able to, and it's a very, very powerful journey to go into your own self and then start to see the value of another human being in that same journey, because now you can't walk from a space of, like Dr. Tierney said, being a high-coated peacock. Now you got to humble yourself, because guess what? You ain't that dope. We just not all that dope, right? I mean, everybody wants to say, oh, I'm dope. Well, if everybody's dope, then why is everybody broken? Why is the community the way? Why is Black America suffering? If we all dope,
right.
then we might be dope. We might be destructive. We might be addictive, and we like, we ain't all that. Like something is inherently wrong. It's just not mathing. It's just not mathing. Who you present yourself to be and who you are not in the same place. Sorry.
No, you don't have to be sorry, because this is what it's all about. Giving us an opportunity to figure out what to put in our toolkit, because we cannot be balanced if we are not having conversations that matter, that mean something. When we come back after the break, I'm going to ask Stacey the same question. What should we find? Go find what? But in addition to that, we're also going to talk about friendships and relationships. Should they be transactional or transformational? When we come back after the break.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol,
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate Black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
There's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
Welcome back, everybody, to A Balanced Life. And as you can tell, we got all the smoke today. It is in this space that we are really trying to discover who we are, what we're meant to be. And we left our last conversation talking about you need to go find. So, Stacey, what do they need to go find?
Truth.
Come on, Stacey.
The only way you're going to find out about yourself when you start doing like Dr. Tierney said, looking inside to find out about yourself. And when you do what my brother said, go into those dark places about yourself. Don't become delusional. The truth, because it will not work until you can be honest with yourself and find the spaces that you need to help hold yourself accountable for and figure out what's going on with that. And now you can flush it out so that you can find better.
All right, so I want to stick with Stacey for a moment, because a part of that being able to find better, to live in your truth, to walk in your truth, whatever that truth may be, there are people who are in our spaces. Listen well, everybody. There are people in our spaces who are keeping us from being balanced. They don't empower us, they enable us. While at the same time, some of our friendships and relationship, friend, family, or coworker, has to also deal with whether they're transactional or are they transformational. Now, Stacey, you work with individuals in your school where you see the whole employee. You're not just looking at what they bring to the classroom. Talk to us about the difference between transactional relationships, what I can get from you, and the transformational ones of what we can do together to bring wholeness to a space.
The transformational relationships, those are the ones that are worthy and last, and you get the best results from, because you're transforming, you're changing, you're growing, you're improving, and we're doing it together as a unit. When I find that I have staff that's transactional, usually they're not going to work well with me too long, because it's going to be something that if you came to take something, once you get that, you're no longer giving. So what are you giving to my babies? How are you transforming the lives of the children that we're serving if you're only in a space where you only can be, in a place of taking or looking for what's going to benefit you? So you got to come into this space really being able to say, how can we improve and grow together? How can we make this thing better for everybody? Those kind of people, keep them in your life.
I like that. Faraji, let's talk about that, because, you are culture. You're telling us about all the things that we do right, that we do well, but there's sometimes we need to look introspectively and see ourselves. How does that transactional friendship versus the transformational friendship help or hinder us in our growth, becoming better humans?
Transactional relationships come out of the very politics and foundation of this country, which is capitalism. Everyone is a come up, right? Either you a come up or you a hold back, and it's like we go into relationships now looking for a transaction. I mean, simply we could talk about male-female relationships in the Black community. The dominating message in hip hop for a woman is, girl, get that money from that dude, right? Just throw it on him sexually and then get the money and get out of and then roll out. For man, it's the opposite. Get the sex, but throw the money first, right? And it becomes this, I mean, if you really think about it, it's so destructive because it breaks down everything that we have traditionally and have been taught about relationships in terms of love and trust and all of those wonderful things. Very transactional. The impact of that is that you are not able to truly connect. So you have a culture, and there are a number of studies that are coming out. Millennials don't want to get married. Millennials don't want to, are actually having less sex, right? There are more same-sex relationships because women are becoming more and more disgruntled about the state of Black men and state of men in general. So there are more same-sex relationships, especially for women. So you're seeing all of these things that are happening because relationships are not fulfilling. When you're talking about having transformational relationships, I mean, we probably have to go back, that's Sister Stacey and Dr. Tierney, y'all both are talking about going back to the beginning, right? Like remember when we were in grade school, elementary school, when we say, okay, that's my friend. What did they do? They made you feel good about yourself. You felt like you could confide in that person. You felt like you had a partner to go through the day with and all of those things. It's not shaping up to be those things nowadays. So you're talking about transformational. You're talking about two people, and I'm not saying in an intimate relationship, even in just in a basic friendship, even in your friendships, there has to be a desire to want to grow and evolve, right? So if your friends are not excited about your growth and evolution, then you might need to check your relationship with them, right? Because if your friends constantly remind you of the past, constantly remind you of who you used to be and what y'all used to do, I mean, that means that person is not growing. And so the transformational relationships requires growth. It requires an assessment. It requires us to make some hard choices about the people that we're around. But it requires us to do something, to take action. And I think that's the big part of this, right? Relationships require action. They don't grow by themselves. They're like children in a sense, right? You know, when I tell people I have, you know, I say, kind of joke around, say, yeah, I got 3 children. I got a son and a daughter, and then I got my relationship, right, with my wife. So it's like there is this constant requirement, this cultivation of this interaction, this experience that I'm sharing with this other human being. And guess what? No one else can speak on that. How your relationship is how you're really. I get out of conversations very quickly. People talk about Dr. King. When we talk about Dr. King, some people say, well, you know, we don't talk about the fact of he cheated on Mother Coretta. Well, you know what? She dealt with it. How come we can't?
Right.
She moved on. She, to her dying day, she lived and she worked and continued to uplift the mission of her husband and that she and her husband done. But we still caught up on that. Like, why? Why do we want to define somebody else's relationship? Why do we want to interfere in somebody else? How people have their relationship is how people have their relationship. Unless it impedes upon our safety and well-being, that's one thing. But other than that, that's their relationship. That's what they committed themselves to. That's the agreement that they made with one another. And you got to ask those questions. You know, you just got to be in a space of kind of cutting everything off and really thinking to yourself, hearing yourself about whether this is transformational or transactional.
Absolutely. And well stated. Dr. Tierney, what say ye?
Can I just tell you, I love coming behind Faraji. I love it. I love it. Because I'm going to pick up right where he left off. And I'm almost kind of spin it a little bit. You have to ask yourself, are you a transaction or are you transformation?
Come on.
So if we look at it in using the example that my brother gave, where the girl is like, get the money and get out, and the guy's like, get the booty and throw the money. Well, you're treating yourself as a transaction. You're saying, I am just a transaction. That's it. We can even take this to business. You selling t-shirts, you can sell popsicles, you can sell whatever. You're communicating to customers, this is nothing more than a transaction. But when you say that you are a transformation, I tell people all the time, before I had a ring, before I had a husband, I was already a wife because I am a transformation. When you get me, honey, your whole life changes. Everything changes when you get me because I'm not a transaction, I'm transformation. And you can go and ask my husband and see, won't he agree that his whole life went up when he got me. But that's because that's how I saw myself in my business. You can ask my clients. I don't treat them as a transaction because this is transformation. Their whole life is changing. And at the same time, they're actually changing my life because this is a transformation that's happening. So when you see yourself as a transaction, then yeah, you're going to enter relationships, romantic or otherwise, business or otherwise, as a transaction, and then be surprised when all you get is a little quid pro quo at the end of the day. But when you see yourself as a transformation, then that changes everything. That changes the culture that's around you, which then impacts the culture around the relationships that you have, the interactions that you have, and ultimately the overall satisfaction that you feel at the end of the day.
I like that. So we're going to wrap up this block, but I want you all to talk to our audience. Give 1 or 2 things that people should release. We've talked a lot about balance, how to move forward, how to get your tribe together. But in this process, there's some habits that we keep bringing on with us from season to season to season to season, and we keep getting the same result. So, Stacey, what is it that people should release?
Release some forgiveness to anything or anybody that has impaired you from being able to move on with yourself.
I love that. Faraji.
Man, she took my words, Sister Stacey. Hey, gone. No, I was going to say, you know, just release the pain. Make an intentional effort to release your pain, because so many of us, and it's the funny thing about pain is like we don't want it, but we definitely hold on to it when it benefits us. And so, you know, you gotta get out of pain. You gotta make the decision. Sometimes pain can be a leverage in some relationships, right? That you hold over on somebody, or pain can be used as a way to get what you want from somebody. So it's you got to release this pain, and you have to be very intentional about saying, you know what, I'm going to let this go and not weaponize the pain, not continue to put myself in a space where I continue to be hurt, or I'm starting to hurt other people, because as the old saying says, hurt people, and we just got to stop hurting each other at this point.
I'm gonna go back to Stacey for a second, because I feel like forgiveness might be a sticking point for people, because they say they want it, but then they don't want to give it, and then sometimes they don't want to receive it. Stacey, I'm gonna back up to you. Add a little something to releasing forgiveness.
Well, it goes back to the pain. Just like my brother just said, if it's something that you have within you, or somebody that you feel has done something wrong to you and you're holding on to that, the only way you can release your pain is by forgiving whatever that's giving you the pain. So the forgiveness is not about the other person. It's about you. You can't move on until you let it go. So release that forgiveness out into the world to whatever it is that's bringing you your pain, your unhappiness, your negative thought pattern, your whatever, because you can't clear that so that you can move on and get to that love and light. So you got to forgive first.
I like that. Dr. Tierney.
Stacey just said it, patterns. Release those broken patterns, habits that's not working. We've been duct taping so much for so long just because that's the way we always did it. This is just how I am. That's how my mama did it. Well, did it work then? No, it ain't working now. Stop trying to find these workarounds for all of this dysfunction that we have and all this broken pattern. Actually do the work to actually fix it. You know, call in the professionals, call in the experts, you know, to tell you what you don't know, so that you can actually have some patterns and some habits that work, that you can then pass down for the generations to come, that will ultimately change the whole culture.
Can I add something to that, Dr. Jacquie?
Go right ahead.
Come on.
Just very quickly, what Sister Dr. Tierney said was so important. And I think it just requires us to take that step back to look at the patterns. Like a lot of times when we go into relationships, friendships, or intimate relationships, we kind of go from one place to another, not really taking the time and not really taking the moments to really reflect on what is my pattern. You know, what is the pattern? You know, like I recently learned about attachment styles. Right. And once I learned about attachment styles, it was like a light bulb when you have these various attachment styles when you get into either intimate relationships or friendships. And it's like, my God. And this is the stuff that you don't learn in school. You don't learn about these things. We don't learn about how to really relate to one another in school. We learn about the other stuff, and we might have some sex ed. But to really learn how to relate to one another, that's a different level of science that requires a lot more intentionality. And to both our sisters' points, it just requires you to humble yourself, to put yourself in a space where you can say, you know what, I'm not my best person now, but I can be one better if you give me time.
Absolutely. If you guys want to hear more about Faraji, what he is and who he does, make sure you watch him on Black Star Network from 3 to 5 p.m. live. So that way you can really tune in to what he's saying and begin to move your life forward. When we come back after the break, I'll give my reflections.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Your money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
welcome back everyone to A Balanced Life. And as you can tell, there's some things you need to put in your toolkit and there's some things you need to take out of your toolkit. Go out and find yourself, find your truth, find the love that relates to you the most and be your authentic self. But while at the same time, it may be important if you're going to balance your life to release yourself, release the pain, release the fear, release your patterns, release the unforgiveness. This will allow you then to clear a pathway for those things that are meant to come your way. So many of us, from the COVID pandemic to pain in our life, to the environments that we lived in, have been living in this state of flux. We've been living in this space where we were able to just do what we want, be what we want, say what we want. But now it comes around full circle, where we have to be able to say that who I was then and how I was living may not be the way I need to continue living in order to live a life of betterment. I hope that we have said something today that has allowed you to really embrace all of who you are, discover what it means to be your true, authentic self. Thank you for watching A Balanced Life here on Black Star Network. Bye now.